Welcome to the Echoes of the Hidden Man, a podcast that explores the struggles of those often unseen in our busy world. Each episode highlights individuals whose experiences resonate with us, yet frequently go unheard. We uncover the resilience, vulnerability, and strength beneath the surface, providing a platform for authentic voices and diverse perspectives. Join us on our journey to discover and create connection as we illuminate the shared human experience that unite us all. Whether you seek inspiration or simply a moment of connection, you're in the right place. Let's explore the hidden narratives together.
Welcome to Echoes of the Hidden Man, a podcast that explore the struggles that men face in our world today. And so this morning, my guest is Mr. Paul Rosenberg, the CEO of Tech Service, Tech Services, Best Tech Services. Okay, we are truly happy to have you with us this morning on our first episode of our podcast regarding co-parenting. And so this morning, I want to begin by having Mr. Paul Rosenberg introduce himself to us and tell us a little about yourself.
Yep. Well, I'm Paul from Best Tech Services, as well as I have a intimate relationship with the Lord, as well as a co-parenting structure with multiple kids. I've been a Christian since I was maybe 15, and I've been doing IT since about the same time. I have a wife and 3 wonderful children.
Beautiful. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced when you first started co-parenting, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge I first faced was actually, fear of rejection from, everybody. I remember when I first got divorced, I thought everybody was instantly going to hate me. I just had this crippling fear that I could never be used by ministry again, that my church would disown me, that all of our mutual friends were just her friends, and that I really had nobody and nothing. I overcame that by just realizing that it's a lie, realizing that in spite of this, I can still be successful, still have a wonderful, godly life, still be in tune with godly ministry, as well as run a successful business, and that I might lose some friends.
Right.
However, anything I lose, the Lord is able to multiply when I seek Him first and really do His will over my own.
Awesome. And I'm sure your faith was one of those pillars that got you through this phase of your life.
Yeah, well, it got real touch and go there for a little while, but I was able to really overcome. I probably hit the worst depression I've ever hit. Like I said, I think divorce hits different for someone who doesn't want a divorce. I remember even counseling with my pastor at the time, how, the person who doesn't want something is always the person most hurt.
Right.
And then, he used the analogy of people leaving the church. He said, people leave the church and I don't want them to go. They leave, and for them, it's just another day. But for me, I'm hurt that I've lost a member of the church, a member of the body.
Right.
And I think that that was well said, because it took me years to get over that. And it only took, my ex a few months, whatever. She was back on the wagon. She started dating a guy who she's now married to. That was how quick she got back on it. It's like ridiculous. But because I was hurt, a lot of things happened that didn't need to happen. um, I think that remembering that God is still God.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He didn't change.
No.
Your circumstance might have changed, but he didn't change.
Awesome.
I think that was pretty big. And then also realizing that no one person makes up my faith.
Right.
Nobody, no one friend, no one minister, no one anybody can decide whether or not I'm going to heaven.
Right.
Or whether
Definitely.
or not I'm used by ministry.
Definitely.
Even if every church in the whole nation kicked me out because I divorced my wife, which, by the way, would never happen in America.
Yeah.
However, let's just illustrate that God can use me in spite of this.
Absolutely.
If he can use a donkey, he can use me. I remember I used to say that a lot. I haven't said that in years, but I used to say that because I really felt like I was at my lowest point in life.
Right.
But I used to just say that to myself, which, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I used to say all the time, well, if you can use a donkey,
Yes.
I'm better. I'm at least a little bit better than a donkey.
Of course. Of course.
So
Yeah. What communication strategies you have found most effective in maintaining a positive relationship with your co-parenting? Because I know after having separated, the challenges of handling that aspect. How did you navigate?
I'm just going to be completely and totally transparent.
Yeah.
I was a little bit of a rebellion to this, but it really, really works. Talkingparents.com. Because the thing is you can't edit or delete anything you put on there, which
Right.
already is, a
Yeah.
big deal. Because you don't want to, if you go off on your ex or you tell them how much you just can't wait to see them again because, you can't believe you didn't want the divorce, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
The nice thing is that can't be removed.
Right.
So, it makes you think twice. I find myself, even to this day, whenever I'm posting on Talking Parents, I'm thinking about the thing sometimes a day, sometimes 2 hours. Sometimes I'm, typing it up and then reading it and then retyping it because I know two things. First of all, it's forever.
Right.
Second of all, it's easily accessed by the courts.
Yes.
In the event you need to make any type of adjustment.
Right.
And third of all, you're not here to be sad, angry, whatever. You're not here for any type of emotion.
Right.
And so when you really put in the work to think about what you want to say, how you want to say it, how it might come across,
right,
it's a big deal. It's extremely effective because guess what? The other party is doing the same.
right,
And then all of a sudden you have the best communication you've ever had.
right.
The problem that most people will find. So when I got married, I got marital counseling. And then when I got divorced, I got divorce counseling, basically.
Yes.
And one thing that was consistent in both marital counseling and divorce counseling is they would say, marriage is a lot like a baby.
Right.
And you nurture it and it starts to grow up and form. However, the moment you get divorced, that baby stops growing.
Right.
It stops changing. It stops molding. It stops this. So the thing is if your baby, was 6 years old when you left the marriage, it stays 6 years old now forever. And so now that person will never change this baby that she had with you.
Yeah.
Your kid might grow up, but her, until the day she dies or he dies, the marriage that she got, that 6-year-old baby, may never change. Now, I think there are going to be some things that do change, like they might realize how good a father
Yes.
you have become.
Absolutely.
Or that you are in spite of the bad baby. Because remember, there's a marriage and then there's a dad or mom.
Yes.
And they're two separate things.
Right.
So that marriage may never change. That marriage might be you have a 6-year-old baby until Jesus comes back again.
Right.
However, that doesn't mean that partner might not see you growing as a father or mother. And I think that was also a big deal, because realizing that we had a baby when I first got married, that we were growing and nurturing that marriage baby, that was awesome. In fact, I was kind of excited about it.
Good.
But when I got divorced and the same exact thing came up, I said, what in, really? So the baby doesn't just dissolve? No, it stays there, but it stays like in that same space. The one of the reasons why God hates divorce,
right?
Why he doesn't condone all this, because now this person is stuck with that baby. You guys, both partners are stuck with that baby.
Absolutely.
Another thing that again is so true. You when you get married and become one in the faith, if you took two pieces of paper together and you glued them together, you did your little swirly glue like back in kindergarten, and you pulled those papers apart, you could get them apart. You really could.
Yeah.
But there's going to be spots and specks.
It's going to damage. It's going to leave some irreparable aspect to that relationship, no matter how you try.
Right. And so a lot of people don't realize that, you're being made one spiritually. So the damage is not physical, it's internal, it's spiritual.
Yes.
And so when unfortunately, when you go into your next marriage, you are now presented, you're now this paper. Now God can make you whole and he can do a lot of amazing things. However, I personally believe God's going to leave a lot of that damage there.
Yes.
Because you left that baby at 6. So guess where you're going to start the new baby at? So even, the baby doesn't change, but still this next marriage, some of your mental aspects are going to start with that 6-year-old baby mindset.
Absolutely. And it leads me now to my next question. How would you describe your co-parenting philosophy? What principle guide your approach, given your experience?
Well, I think that, I used to try and will things into existence with my partner. Oh, I've got to have blah, blah, blah. It's got to be right now. It's got to be this way. Yeah. And there's no God in that. No. I mean, there's really nothing. I mean, there's no God in that. And what I realized is,
you got to be the example. You got to be that.
Well, even if you're not the example, and that's the other thing. You have to be strong. You have to realize that perfect love casts out fear.
Yes.
And and love cannot be made perfect if fear is in it.
No.
And then, of course, the presence of fear is the absence of faith.
Right.
And then, in addition to that, the yokes of the Lord are light and the burdens are easy, right?
Yes.
So when you try and will, I've got to have full custody, I've got to do it this way, it's got to be that way.
Yes.
And what you're doing is you're asserting your human, fleshly emotion and desires, and what that's going to end up with is conflict and nastiness and disruption and poor parenting on both sides, and just you don't want to do that. What you want to do instead is you want to pray.
Definitely.
And you want to be thoughtful and mindful. You want to be wise. You want to be considerate. And you want to be loving to the person who may not love you.
Right. Definitely. Because when you have separation, there's always that pain, that disappointment, that hurt that still lingers. Right. Even though you oftentimes get counseling, but that emotional pain sometimes takes years to be resolved. And so one thing I am happy for is that your faith oftentimes help you and the word of God, because one thing I've always encouraged parents who I've spoken to, who have these challenges, who have separated, is that if you make the child the focus, oftentimes you're able to mitigate the problems you will face when you deal with issues. Now, lead me to my next question. How do you and your co-parent divide responsibility when it comes to parenting? Or there are specific roles each of you take on?
Well, here's the thing.
Do you have a plan?
I've found it best to realize. So Jesus was 100% man, 100% God.
Right.
Right. Well, it's the same thing at the different households. You might only have him 50%. For me, I have two boys that are timeshare with.
Yeah.
And you might only have these two boys 50% of the time. However, that is 100% of the time of their childhood with dad. And so this whole division of responsibilities, you don't. That's truthfully, is they have their house, you have their house. Because when you try and co-parent with them more intimately, more like, hey, blah, blah, you're going to realize you're going to have that baby I talked about
Right.
is going to be stirred up and start to, because the thing is again, your souls were made one. So if you go further than the child, which the only thing that you should really be talking about with your co-parent is, hey, I see a bruise here, or I want time sharing for this day, or hey, I'm running late. Hey, I'd like to switch weekends. Whatever. It should only be on a coordinating level, because if you try to go deeper than that, then you are now invading spaces that you shouldn't be invading, including your future wife might have an issue with it, your future husband, your counselor, whoever, your best friend.
So there are boundaries that you don't want to cross. There are boundaries that you set up as you co-parent. Okay. Now, how do you think your co-parenting arrangement has affected your sons? Have you noticed any particular benefit or challenges from that situation?
Well, here's the thing. Yes, to both. There's a benefit. For instance, my son for multiple years, my firstborn, he felt like he had double of everything, and everything was twice as good.
You're right.
I mean, it was ridiculous. This kid had everything, because we, on some level, me and my ex-wife were competing with one another with, gifts and the way our Christmases were and trips were and all this. And it's so funny because it was so obvious. Like, I went on a cruise, she goes on a cruise. I bought him a bike. She all of a sudden bought a bike. I bought him a Switch. He's got a Switch. It was literally like boom, 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 boom. And then as a result, Josh now felt like, hey, I've I've got it all. There's nothing I could possibly want. But both of us also realize the same thing. Now he has too much. Wow. So for instance, because he had so much of abundance for the first part of his life, now he's getting to the point where, what do you need? I don't need anything. Well, what do you want? Can we go camping? Like,
And as you talk about that, what are the things you do when you have them? Because I know you don't have them all the time, but what are the meaningful things you do with your sons to make sure that they know that you value them, you love them, you care for them? What are some of the things you do?
Well, in the beginning, it was again all flesh. I don't know. I had such a worldly take on it because it's not talked about in the church, to be honest.
Right.
So I only had the world to go off of. So I was all about, well, I got to make sure that I'm the one that teaches them how to rollerblade and ride a bike and tie a tie, and I got to make sure that I'm there to show them how to play baseball.
Right.
And later in life, I've been co-parenting now. Just for instance, Josh, he's now 12. I've been co-parenting since he was 2.
Wow!
So if you put that in perspective, that's 10
years.
Now I don't focus on any of that, actually. And sometimes something as simple as playing a Fortnite session together is good enough.
Yeah.
What I focus on now that he's later in life is, how am I getting him closer to the Lord, both here and at his mom's house? What can I make sure he learns? What habits can I instill to better him? Everything from daily Bible reading to every Monday we do, I basically teach the whole family something about the Word of God, whether it be a Bible study or Bible trivia or something. And then in addition to that, some things like, Josh is not really athletic. He doesn't really like playing sports or going outside because his mom threw him into like
So
robotics.
in essence, his birthday and certain special event, you make that a very super thing for him. You know, since he doesn't like certain activities, you
Well, no, it's not that. It's all about him. So
oh,
they get to choose. They got to choose whether they wanted a present or event for probably 5 years.
okay,
So one, for instance, one year they chose Universal, one year they chose Disney Springs, one year
right,
they chose camping, etc. Um, because the thing is, before I got married to my second wife, I had more disposable income.
right,
So we used to do family camping trips every year in the summer for
right,
summer break,
good,
or fishing trip, one or the other. However, what happened is once I got married, I just had less disposable income. Uh, and so we switched that to the birthday. Hey, we can still do these type of trips.
right,
However, that comes at a cost because we only have so much
much
money.
money,
So we still do those things. What I was going to say about the physical activity, because he is gearing now more towards robotics and video games and
yes,
high level math, and
right, good.
something as simple as, hey, I need you to do 10 push-ups every day.
But as you mentioned that, one research I did was recently where I find that 70% of our boys are falling behind in reading, in English, and maths. And so you mentioned his ability and skill, and I'm sure that you are supporting his educational growth and development because I know your boys. Three of them are your two sons plus your stepson. They're brilliant boys,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that they have a great future. But they can't accomplish what they need to accomplish without a father in their life, and that is the role you play. And I'm very proud of you. I've watched you, care for your boys. The way you prioritize their well-being. That is notable, and I want to commend you for that. Now, leads me to my next question. Are there any tools that are resources that you use to manage your schedules, communication, that makes it much easier for you and your co-parent?
Again, just talking parents. So we have a written agreement that was signed off by the judge. It's very common,
Good.
and then I think that's important. It costs a little bit of money. Um, if you guys can figure it out by yourselves, that's even better. But otherwise, you do have to go through attorneys. But if you
Yes.
guys are both on the same page, you want to get
Have
it
you ever
over.
tried mediation before?
Right. Well, mediation, in my experience, doesn't work, especially in
Okay.
the beginning,
Right.
because you guys are so emotional. I want it my way. No,
Yeah.
I want it that way. And then all of a sudden, mediation's like, well, what did you paid? Why are we here?
All right. Question. I know you have a written agreement. What if now the boys are growing and they're changing? Is there leeway for adjustment to that written agreement?
So the law goes as such. Um, if both parties agree for the adjustment, absolutely. You don't need to go any further. Both parties agree. It's adjusted. Period. Um, if if you want it adjusted on paper,
Yeah.
then you have to go through the judge, and the problem is most of the time they won't adjust it.
Okay.
Now you because you have to show cause.
Okay.
And most of the time, the cause they're looking for is extreme cause, meaning
So
drug use,
okay.
alcoholism, abusive behavior. Like,
So what about disagreement and conflict arising between you and the co-parent? Is that a means by which you need to make a change?
um, no, believe it or not. So remember, I told you Jesus was 100% man and 100% God, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly the way it is with the two houses.
Okay.
The two houses are your everything as a co-parent. It's
Yeah.
not a concern what they're doing at their house.
No.
If the concern arises regarding like mistreatment,
Right.
now of course you address the co-parent first, but then honestly the next one is child protective services, where they do a full investigation,
Okay.
and then if it needs to go further, you can do guardian ad litem, and then the judge. But there's like 5 steps.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, and the thing is most I like to think that most of the time that we're, especially if we're both Christians getting married, we're going to try to treat our kids right. So
Right.
most of the time you have no leg to stand on. I want it this way, you want it that way. Who gives a crap? You do it like you want on your
Yeah.
on your house, and I'll do it my way at my
Right.
house.
What kind of support system do you have in place, whether it's friends or family communication, to help in that process of navigating co-parent? Is there a support system apart from both of you?
So, I think that when I got married, um, I got my first real support. So I've been married about 5 years now, and I think that's a big deal. 5 years uh, married, and so that's 5 years of support,
Great support.
which is really great.
Yes.
So the thing about it is my wife was my support regarding co-parenting, probably, unfortunately, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years in, because even then, it's weird. You're almost like you don't want to bring your baggage, so to speak,
Right.
and then, even though she's your ex-wife, to your wife, she
Right.
feels more like a baby mama.
Okay.
And she treats her like she can treat her
Right.
like you're talking to your baby mama or whatever. And, which is really, it's
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
ghetto
Yeah.
and slang.
Yeah.
But the truth is again, this is not brought up in the church. No one's preaching a sermon, hey, in the event of divorce, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So because of that, even
there's
Christians,
no proper educational system or support system within, because I believe that if you're a Christian going to a church and you have had a divorce, it's always good to have a session, particularly when you have to co-parent. And so I think more or less that we're going to have to encourage our pastors and those who are spiritual leaders for their people to understand all of these things that do happen. Now, I want you to look in the camera.
mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to other fathers who are beginning co-parent? You have had a long stint in the journey of co-parent. I know you have a lot of experience. What would you say to them in the beginning? What to do? What are some of the steps that they must have in place to have a successful co-parenting relationship?
I think the very first thing I'd say to someone entering the situation is, it's okay.
Okay.
It's all right. Calm down. I know that it's incredibly scary. Do your very best to give that to the Lord as quickly as possible.
Right.
I know that you may be experiencing pain you've never felt before in your heart. And I know that you might, if you're a father, you might feel like you can't talk about it. The quicker you're able to give it to God, the quicker and better off you'll be. Second thing is, whatever he or she says, it's okay. It doesn't matter. I know it feels like it matters. I want you to know it doesn't matter. Everything that you are facing is temporary. It came to pass. It didn't come to stay. So if she or he illegally talks bad about you, illegally alienates you, illegally does, yes, of course you can bring it up, but try your very best to calm down and give it to God. Because the thing is the moment you allow your flesh to get involved is the moment you messed up as a co-parent. Remember, doesn't matter how big it feels in the moment. It's going to pass.
Right.
He's going to reach another day, another month, another year. When I first got my Sammy, my little one, just a brief story here, he was 2 years old. That's my second born.
Yes.
And I want you to know that he gave me the biggest stank face in a constant state of a stank face. And a little bit of a brief story with that one. That in that particular situation, the mother did alienate me. She took him for 10 months. Right? So if you look at that, 10 months not seeing your dad. So when I finally got him, she's like, well, her attorney, of course, argued, well, we don't know, maybe a slow reunification process.
Right.
And the judge was so angry and said, yeah, there's going to be a reunification process, and it will be a rapid reunification.
Wow.
And he was right on time, because
you needed that.
Right.
Because that separation from your child, did affect you emotionally. Did
Yeah.
affect you,
Oh yeah, I felt like some days I woke up and I felt like I was alive, but I was dead. I was dead inside.
Wow.
I was literally going through life as a dead man. I literally, seriously, I didn't. Everything felt like I was experiencing it with no feeling.
Wow.
But I digress. The point is, when I finally did get him,
Yes.
he acted as if he hated me.
Wow.
Even though he didn't know me, even though I was feeding him bottles and playing with him and helping him take his first steps, and all, he had none of that, right? So for me, I'm the strange guy that took him away from his mom, and he hated me.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And that first year, so Terrible Twos is already a thing. So that first year getting him back, that was tough. But I had to remember that, there was, but God, can do all things. So it's like, I had to really remember that, that God's in control.
Yes.
God's understands what's going on. God can work it all out. It's not bigger than God.
Yes.
No matter how big you feel it is, it's not bigger than God.
Right.
And God will do. You have no idea. You have no idea. I've seen God do some of the most amazing things you can think of. It's like, because you don't even think of the solution,
right?
Because you don't have a divine mind. You have a human mind. You can't comprehend. So you're like, whoa, that's happening? Okay. Well, that's why I gave it to you, God. You're in control. I'm so glad.
Okay. So looking ahead, what are your hopes and goals for the relationship with your co-parents and your children as they grow up?
Well, my children, I want them to be my children forever and ever. I think that's a common theme amongst parents. I mean, you didn't get the child for 18 years. You got them for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I think that's real important to understand. So my goal is to be the best father I can be to them until they die. Okay. It's not until or I die. And I hope to die first. I would love them to bury me. So really, for the rest of my life, I want to be the best father in each individual chapter of their lives. As far as co-parenting relationship with my exes, honestly, I just want them to go to heaven. I don't want a relationship with them, and I don't think you should either. If you're at this space, you're
primary focus is supposed to be your child.
Exactly. Right? I hate to say this to you, but you can't be in this space that I'm talking about and in the space of getting them back.
Right.
If you're in this space, you're not getting them back. Right. And if you do, again, it's going to be by divine means. It's not going to be by you trying to get them back.
Right.
So you really need to separate the two and try not to be emotional about it. And believe me, I know that it's hard.
Okay.
But I think that in terms of relationship with my co-parent, as long as it stays as close to 0% and I give everything to the Lord and everything is all about the kid, I think we're going to be okay.
Okay. All right. My final question to you, and I want for you to just give as honest as you can, how has it been co-parenting? What challenges are your perspective on co-parenting? Have you learned anything surprising about yourself and how the process has made you? Just tell us as we conclude, how has it made you better? How have you grown over the years? And how have you had the privilege to make a difference in other persons who are probably you're seeing in similar situation as yours?
Well, the first thing you need to realize is that just as Joseph was locked up, you were locked up. Wow. And you're operating from a prison.
Wow.
So Joseph in the Bible, he got wrongly imprisoned. You're welcome to read about it. He spent his teen years and his early 20s uh, in prison,
Right.
and so a long time for
Yeah.
something he didn't
You
do.
do. Yeah.
That's the same. So as long as you are co-parenting and this child is a minor, you are also in prison. Congratulations. Um, so realizing that, you have to understand that there is still ministry and godliness inside prison
Right.
of co-parenting. You can't move, and and everything is a big deal, down to the car you drive, where you stay, how much food is in your fridge, for until the moment he leaves. Versus, you know, obviously it wouldn't be like that if you and your spouse had stayed together. Um, so realizing that, understanding the joys
Yes.
that still exist. You know, the sun still rises. You can
Yes.
still go to the beach. You can still take road trips. You can still go out of the country, for a week. You can still work out. You can still get fit. You can still teach your child everything you know about the Bible.
Right.
And you can still see those eyes light up. And just realizing that um, the amount of blessing and love and ministry
Yes.
that you can still do
Yes.
from inside a prison. You are locked up. I'm sorry if you didn't. I'm the first one to tell you this. Then congratulations, you got the realization much earlier.
Yeah.
But everything that you do until those children are 18 now is within shackles, including your next spouse. Believe it or not, you thought you had baggage before. Let me tell you, ain't nothing like another kid. Whether she sees it as a blessing or a hindrance, I promise you, when it comes down to, even though it's your ex-spouse, it's her baby mama that she's got to deal with. It's gonna make her or him feel some type of way.
Okay. So I'm really excited this morning. I'm so blessed to be here on this podcast with you, sir. A man who had experience in this era of co-parenting. And one thing I have learned over the years as being a minister of the gospel and sharing and communicating with families, one thing I know for sure that our society is not emphasizing is the importance of a father in their child's life. There's no mother who can give to a boy um, or a girl what the father is supposed to communicate and be. And so I am very proud of your faithfulness over a decade co-parenting, and I'm seeing the results because I know you boys. I see how excellent they are. Their whole behavior and demeanor speaks to the fact that you have been pouring into them and that you're molding them. And that is why it says that men is really the bedrock of our society. And what would it not be having a father in your life and, to help you and to show you how to strive. And so this morning we are excited. I want to say for those who have joined us on this program, I want for you to subscribe, like, share. We want to impact our fathers. We want to impact our men. And this program, this podcast is designed to give a voice to men who are seemingly insignificant. They are doing a great job. Like Mr. Rosenberg has been doing an excellent job as a father. And so today I want to say thank you, sir, for coming and being a part of our podcast, our first episode of many to come. And I'm sure we will have him back again, giving us great nuggets and how we can impact our world, our children. And so thanks again for being with us. Have a great day.